All right, kiddies. I don't know if you all can hear us. I think we're live, and today Jill Remensnyder is not with us, but in her place is the wonderful Dr. Simeon Hine. Thanks for making time for us.
Hey guys, how's it going tonight?
It's going pretty good. Kind of chaotic here with Google Chrome. I'm not going to be using Google Chrome anymore. Here, Firefox is the way to go. I haven't used that in years, but it got rid of the gremlins, Jill, that we experienced last week and we were experiencing again. So you are coming in nice and clean here. I'm not going to be able to look at the chat here as usual, but we do have somebody moderating our chat over in YouTube. So if you have any specific questions for a moderator, which isn't Brett, Jill and Brett Simeon are on a secret shoot. I think you know where, somewhere in the state of California. We can say that much. I think Jill's been posting pictures of Mount Shasta and the
Yes.
highway and whatnot. And I don't know if they're near where all the fires have happened lately, but that's just, it seems like it's just getting crazier and crazier over there. Simeon, you're nowhere near the fires, are you?
No, I'm in central Pennsylvania, a
Okay.
state that was made famous by Stan Gordon for all sorts of strange cryptid and cryptoid behavior, UFOs and everything.
And then we got your trusty dog Astro there, who always likes to make.
Mister.
Yeah,
Oh, we got
let
little
him know.
kids. Hey,
You take care of him.
get
You
back
know
here.
what's funny here too is that when we do on camera stuff, Astro either gets really interested in anomalous activities that are surrounding Simeon, or he gets insanely jealous over not getting any camera time. Um,
This is my emotional squatch animal.
if my dog comes in here, Cooper, and those two start communicating, maybe we'll just give the microphones over to the dogs.
Say
That's
hi, everyone.
um,
You stay over here. Okay.
Simeon, is this a work-related trip or is this just a family? Are you headed towards family on the East Coast?
No, I'm headed back. I'm headed back from the East
Okay.
Coast towards the West.
Oh, you're headed west this time of year. Okay.
This time, yeah, yeah. The last time we did it, we right. It was coming to you from yeah, right. We are headed east, so we're going back. Yeah.
Okay. So things haven't slowed down in the world of the plasmoids or the drones. It's just the
Oh my
news.
god.
Is it just the news cycle that's slowed down? Can we touch on that a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay, touch on it.
No, it's not the news cycle because if you listen to News Nation, Ross Coolhart and his sources,
Yeah.
he just interviewed a mayor from New Jersey, and they're still seeing them. It's being seen all over the New York State area, New Jersey, Long Island. Uh, I had friends saw them over Westchester recently. I saw the footage. It was just objects doing non-plane type stuff. So it's possible. It's possible that what's going on is our perception of reality. The social consensus changes over the years and decades, and things that might have been there the whole time all of a sudden begin to receive attention. What we've talked about, Tobes, in the past,
Right.
hidden events. Because I've seen videos of these types of objects decades ago from researchers just setting up video cameras pointed at the sky all day, and they would literally look at 12 hours of high density video footage, high resolution footage, and they would see these little objects, hovering below clouds and little triangular vehicles. I mean, right in Boulder, Colorado. People I know from there who've done this. So this whole wave of events around the drones and these types of objects, and especially interesting the entire denial from the White House and White House spokespeople, the Biden administration saying this is just what the New York Times called communal fever. It's just some sort of mass contagion, where we all get
Right.
excited. Yeah, but then why are they closing off airspace around nuclear power plants in New Jersey, and why did they put all those drone restrictions in place if there's nothing going on? The No, you have too many qualified people seeing very large objects. I've talked to
Hmm.
people that have have seen these car-sized, fast objects that stay in the sky for hours and hours. I mean, there's speculation. I've speculated in some of my YouTube videos. This could be some demonstration of a technological breakthrough, a Sputnik moment, and this is what it looks like. And anyone alive at any period in history would have the same feelings that we're having right now is what the F is that? You know, when all of a sudden there's a paradigm shift in technology. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this represents that, in my view, and I'm happy to be proven wrong, I don't think these are, for the most part, NHI, UAP. Well,
Mm-hmm.
they are UAP and they are, unidentified, but I think there's some sort of terrestrial origin. It's just amazing that they're all over the place.
Now, have you been able to confirm any encounters on the ground as far as not only extraterrestrial, crypto-terrestrial, Bigfoot stuff happening in proximity to where these sightings are happening in the woods or
See,
thereabouts?
that's what I'm not seeing. Uh,
Uh-huh.
but what we are seeing is some strange gravimetric space-time anomalies around the craft. I just heard the Tedesco brothers, I believe, from Long Island, who's on
Mm.
They're on News Nation with Russ Coolhart, and they were saying they said there are a lot of anomalies with their own radar and the colors and so forth. It's sort of like they're bending,
Mm-hmm.
shifting space time in an
Right.
anomalous way, the way UFOs do. In my recent video on YouTube channel about this being some sort of Sputnik moment technological breakthrough that would be explainable with cold fusion low energy nuclear reaction technology, which does create gravitic collapse.
Okay.
It does create these strange effects, and if you don't contain it properly, it would spread out a bit. So it might
Right.
not be indication of. I haven't seen the type of other effects though, Tubbs. It's a good question. The so-called five observables, the sort of transmedium travel from ocean to atmosphere to space, and I haven't seen evidence in these drones. They seem sort of terrestrially based. I mean, not drones,
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote drones,
Mm-hmm.
but they seem to create some anomalies. For example, there was that case of that family that said one passed over their car and their clock changed time and came back. Other people who've flown their drones nearby, I think, including some of these sheriff's departments that have had anomalies in their own objects, in some cases, the batteries being drained really quickly. So we don't know if this is some sort of intentional countermeasure in these objects. They're sort of weaponized UAP to do that intentionally, or if it's an effect that we often see around cold fusion Leonard devices from electronuclear collapse, gravimetric changes. Keep in mind, Tobes, the original Air Force Department of Energy research into ball lightning and plasma and plasmoids, starting with Winston Bostic, who was a Princeton, uh, associated, I think also one of the universities in California, researcher for DOE. This was about propulsion way back in the 50s, and it transitioned to ball lightning research within the Air Force, still to this day classified. And it could only be because it has to do, in my view, looking at what the words are that are redacted from these ball lightning studies, Eric
Mm-hmm.
Davis, and so forth. Wilson, Davis Wilson notes that Eric Davis, his 2003 ball lightning report, I mean, it's so heavily redacted. And you can start seeing it when they say a blank research program. And you just have to fill in like propulsion research program. And it seems like, yeah. So, and they talked about doing, getting spacecraft to Mars in 8 days using plasmoids, using this Winston Bostic, which is sort of a Nikola Tesla adapted, miniaturized technology. Tesla had these really large room-sized pulse discharge
Right.
devices and so forth. And so Bostic had kind of gotten it down into like a lab-sized tabletop test tube,
Right.
galaxy test, yeah, by crossing these plasmoids together in cross magnetic fields. It creates very interesting effects. And of course, we've seen this around cryptids and Bigfoot, which was my kind of spark to write Dark Matter Monsters, which again, thanks so much for everyone's interest in it. It just seemed there were too many parallels there between some cryptid and Bigfoot, whether Bigfoot or cryptids. I mean, that's a
Sure.
debate. Yeah, there was too many parallels. I mean, I just spoke to a witness a couple days ago, and I'm going to interview him a little more of a dogman encounter as an 8-year-old inside his cabin. He heard the door sliding open. He said the thing had to duck down to get inside, and it came right into the bedroom. And he said the room got cold. How many times have we heard this, Tobes, from Bigfoot
Hmm.
sightings, UFO sightings? So that's the sort of thing that got me, you know, thinking there's actually something common in nature here going on between cold fusion, Leonard, and
Hold that
UFO.
up again, Simeon. I put it on mirror mode for you so we can read what you just held up. Otherwise, there we go. I can't put up the graphic, so Simeon's putting it up for us here.
Yes, and thanks everyone for
Yeah.
your support and great comments about this. It's still such a big, a top of the charts type of book in electromagnetic theory on Amazon to this day, years after, a couple of years in. So,
Yeah.
and I still think it's correct. I mean, you get
Hmm.
these gravimetric changes that people notice around Bigfoot sometimes. I'm not saying every single time, and I know some of them don't exhibit that activity, but some do.
Right.
And you get it around the dogman and other type of
Well, the big
creatures.
one, Simeon, is the vacuum effect, where people describe this denseness, where there is almost like you're inside of a padded cell or a padded room or a sound booth, and everything becomes extremely stale as far as auditory senses. Is that a part of what you're finding too? Okay.
Yeah, because when you look at the ball lightning accounts, ball lightning, or some people report that happening. I remember an account happening by the ocean where they said you couldn't hear the waves anymore. It
Wow.
became that deadened, dull space. Now, I want to put a caveat here. If anyone listening, any of the viewers right now, all you guys, if someone has a really different idea than what I'm proposing, another set of principles,
Hmm.
I'm totally open to hear this, but hearing what that point of view is. But to me, when you look at the similarities between these phenomena, you get the feeling you're talking about a type of what we call in physics condensed matter science, where there are different emergent properties at work having to do with fractal shapes, toroidal, donut
Right.
like shapes that generate an entirely different set tobes of electromagnetic qualities, alternative Maxwellian electromagnetics, extended Maxwellian electromagnetics, which leads to these properties. Yeah, that the coldness that people feel, the dulling of the sound, and the strange space time effects,
Right.
battery draining effects. I've personally only seen this around crop circles, but that's enough. I think last time I mentioned to you, one of our tour guests even had one of his keys sort of melt after being in a crop circle when he put it into the lock in the hotel and went back. It
Oh, like Hutchinson effect style? Really?
yeah,
Wow.
and it suggests that there's another reality around us. You could call it a parallel reality. I see it more like an interior
Hmm.
reality, and we're an exterior reality. We only see this exterior one most of the time, and we're wrapped around another fractal, toroidal, electromagnetheric type of reality with its own cold fusion, linear life
Yeah.
forms, creatures, NHI that inhabit that type of universe. And Ken Shoulders, who actually was hired to look into the work of John Hutchinson to see if it made sense, right? He,
We should remind people who John Hutchinson is as far as
yeah,
his
yeah,
work that he's done. So
Canadian
he was
inventor, yeah, yeah.
right. And what was he finding?
He found he could create these fractured, weird metal samples at room temperature with strong electromagnetic pulses. The metal would become like a liquid, not hot, just room temperature, weird quantum effects on the metal that he could put his thumb into the metal and leave a print.
Like putty, like silly putty, like
Yes,
put his
exactly.
hand inside like an aluminum bar. Yeah.
Yeah, and other metal objects merge into the
Right,
metal
wood
bar.
and metal. Like there was this at least a couple beautiful examples. In fact, I think on eBay for sale, because he got hard up for money, I think, and you could actually see what looked like broken two by fours that would medge their fibers into these aluminum blocks, which I don't think that's possible.
Right. Well, this is, the findings of Ken Shoulders and Takeaki Matsumoto and other people that were mentioned in Flash of Beauty, Paranormal Bigfoot, and are known to the cold fusion Leonard community and people in condensed matter and so forth.
Right.
And this is one of the properties of ball lightning. Uh, there are examples of ball lightning going through train windows, and the same effect would be seen. The person could put their thumbprint into the frame of the aluminum frame of the window, not hot, just malleable. And that has to be an atomic level principle where a solid instantaneously
Mm.
becomes a liquid, not from temperature change where we're used to in or classical reality, but from an effect of the particles kind of aligning into what we call coherent matter, becoming more wave-like. Basically, the
Hmm.
matter becomes more wave-like and more flexible. And so we see this across a range of phenomena here. And Ken Shoulders, looking into Hutchinson and Hutchinson effect, he uses these words, Tobes, which, I mean, it's haunting when you look at the interests that we have on this channel and in the Flash of Beauty movies. He says that there's a black universe next to us all the time that contains a type of dark ball lightning, micro orbs, and so forth, that doesn't quite couple into our reality. It's there, but you don't see it. And it operates according to its own principles. I'm not trying to scare anybody, but it's around you right now. It's behaving, and it's a kind of at a resting point, so it's not intruding.
Hmm.
It has its own, equilibrium. Even Astro settles down after a
Right.
while. And this will, but it can be charged
Yeah.
up. And it can, when you
Right.
see that ball lightning come into your room or any sort of life form associated with it,
Hmm.
it's not necessarily coming from somewhere else. I know we associate these life forms with the forest or the desert or mountains and so forth, but it's
Correct.
sort
Mm.
of in the space around you.
Right.
And it emerges. This is my thinking about it. I mean, you don't have to agree. I'm not saying this has to be like this, but this seems to make sense across this entire range of phenomena. Is just like you can have cold fusion, micro orbs, ball lightning, kind of come in right from the local area. This could be true of these life forms. It just means that they're more comfortable in certain fractal environments, and
Okay.
this is why you see, Bigfoot going into trees and so forth. I mean, I know someone that just saw this. I mentioned this to Brett, recently. Someone I know from RV was in Calabasas near LA in one of those open space areas. She wasn't even a believer in Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and yet she sees one in front of her by a creek, and it walks into a tree. She sent me the pictures of the tree. It's not a very big tree. But I mean, we've heard this over and over again. I've even heard this from a nurse that I know who's taking care of a lot of loggers from Idaho, Montana, from the 40s and 50s. We're talking the old timers when it was really wild out there, right? They
Sure.
told her they saw this phenomena of Bigfoot going into trees, behind trees, and disappearing. And the trees were not big enough to absorb, seemingly.
Well, not only that, Simeon, it's the rate in which they go supposedly behind the trees. So they're dashing behind these trees at full rate of speed and able to stop behind a pine tree, which is maybe 24 inches in width. And you have something that's, so the aerodynamics of it don't work out with the physiology or the tree itself. So, and then there's people that talk about there being a percussive sound or feeling a percussive sound. I know that Ira Wolfnosen described a moment where she saw a black shadow push itself into a cottonwood tree, and a bird came out of the branch and was stunned by this percussive consequence of this black figure going into this tree. So maybe that explains some of the sounds we're hearing as well. Is not so much a tree knock, but it's an entry point or an exit point.
Right. That would make a lot of sense. And there are these sounds associated with ball lightning, coherent matter, overall, this whole
Right.
family of phenomena that we call coherent matter. And there's coherent sound phenomena. And there's
That's
interaction
yeah.
between sound. There's something called ionic acoustic waves. And this is the way sound interacts with electromagnetic material.
Mm-hmm. Coherent
So,
sound is the one that I always try to search for that word in my database of other information here, but now I got to write it down. So these are the more anomalous sounds that we can't explain, which I've just been calling, these I don't know, ethereal sounds, right? Like we don't know what they are, but they seem to be associated with activity of some kind, either an entry point, exit point, or some kind of interaction point where the witness is not able to appreciate it on a certain level. They either have to record it or be there at the right moment. And so often we're not there at the right moment. So these coherent sounds, it's a variable state for this phenomena, and it can take all different matters of not only of the way it delivers, but the way it presents itself.
mhm,
Okay.
yeah. And that would make sense that as these creatures snap into the tree in some way, merge with the energy field of it, it's not something that we can necessarily see.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go through these phase changes in matter, you could get a sound effect. And there's a name for this, Tobes. I mean, we call coherent light a laser, right? Light amplitude, amplified stimulation, emission, radiation. But we call coherent sound a Saser. Sound amplified stimulated emission of radiation. And, at this Snippy 24 event last year in Alamosa, Katie Page, who was presenting the Elbert County Ranch, where she actually lived for a couple of years as a teenager, there were these projected voices into the house. There was no bodies there, but there were people talking to them, saying all sorts of strange things. And one of Katie's theories about it, she'd be a good person to talk on the show sometime, because they had the whole range of effects that you had at
Mm-hmm.
Skinwalker Ranch. The same thing, including the strange boxes that would just show up and disappear outside in the property. Uh,
Strange light boxes, like
yeah,
boxes of light. And we should be
but
Katie
physical.
Page is also in Beyond Skinwalker Ranch,
Yeah,
right? Like
right, right, right. Yeah, the
they
show.
bring
Yeah,
her back to the ranch and
yeah,
she sees
that's
it
the
for
show.
the
Yeah,
first
that
time.
Katie.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, she went looking at her research. She found that the military had also developed how to project coherent sound on a laser beam, which would make sense because you're talking about two types of coherent phenomena:
Mhm.
sound and lasers and lasers simultaneously. And we talked about this in the Alamosa area out there. And this conference will be, I think, not this year, but the following year, it'll be open to the public. We talked about whether they were doing that intentionally. Was it were they trying to scare the family off the land, the
Right.
military, since they owned all the property around there, or is it a property of coherent life forms being able to
Mhm.
project sound? I mean, they wouldn't have to physically be there because it can
Mhm.
be projected. It's
Okay.
Yeah, again, murmurations, flocks of
Mhm.
birds. You
Now,
know,
is this the same house too that was near a a quarry of some kind, as though to say that there was, I think, a company near the property that they were insinuating that there's underground digging, and they were using like this quarry company or this cement factory as basically a shell operation to go under this property and go into the mountainside. And I think things got more interesting in the mountainside behind this ranch that they go to. You got to go check out Beyond Skinwalker Ranch. It's as good as Skinwalker Ranch. It's a little more interesting, really, because they're drawing connections in a way that are really unpredicted. Like, I mean, we could get into the episodes here one by one, but I wanted to use you, Simeon, in the 30 minutes we have left
Hey,
for
sure.
examining some footage here that we have, because it is topical to talk about some of the footage coming out from LA, and it goes, it goes within the vein of what happened to John Keel. Now, John Keel, of course, from Mothman Prophecies, talked a lot about there being a harbinger that showed up before a great tragedy. I think even during some of the tsunamis, there's some interesting footage during and after the tsunami. Now, LA's experienced a huge tragedy here, probably the biggest tragedy of all time for them.
Yeah,
And but
yeah,
this UAP stuff refuses to go away. So, would you feel comfortable reviewing some of this footage here with
absolutely.
us in the audience here, and just give me
Sure,
your
sure.
initial impression here? So, I believe the 7th was the Palisades kickoff for the first flame that came down from the mountain. So this is between the 8th and the 7th of some kind, maybe a little bit later than the 8th, but this is coming down. You'll see the fire pushing down in the footage here. Let me get it loaded up. Off to the right here, and as you see here coming down from the flames, it looks like debris. Have you seen this footage, Simeon? Okay.
No, 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 no.
Okay. Are you seeing that object now? It takes off, I believe, to 101. It goes off frame, and now it's going to come back into view.
Yeah, well, there it is. Yep.
And is it? This is just one of the steady cams focused in on the Santa Monica beach. Now, at first, I thought this was debris of some kind, possibly a drone that was flying into the eastern wind, pushing out to the Pacific. Um, and I thought that just based upon the fact that it lands what appears to be behind a palm tree on the beach. But then if you go to this footage here, this seems to be the same object here. And so what you're going to see is you're going to see this object approach and then descend in and around the water off to the left side of the frame in the horizon line. And it jumps through the water with kind of like a transmedium dolphin swim or stroke. This guy's going to zoom into it. You see this coming up right. There it is, underwater, pushing up and down. Comes up and into the water, and then straight up. So, I mean, you would agree this is either a really good visual effects, Simeon, or this is something non-traditional as far as aircraft.
Do you think it could be ice crystals?
Is that one of the prosaic responses?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Yes.
think it could be a misidentification of the planet Venus. That's,
Oh, that sneaky Venus here, but
no, so I'm
that
guessing.
darn old sneaky Venus. But this part I thought was really impressive.
I
That
think
part
it's a weather balloon, actually.
is working
It's
here.
very interesting looking. This is, it is again. I think Tobes, you saw that
Yeah.
recent article that's been making some waves about plasmoids in the atmosphere.
Yes.
Right, and it's a long article. I started reading. It's like 100 page long, lots of photos.
Right.
It just reminds me of what they're attempting to show us in that article.
I'll play this first part again here, and it does give the impression that it is debris and the way that it kind of falls and flutters, but it does.
I know it's the International Space Station.
Now, because they have had drones flying around, flying into some of the, the planes that are collecting water to put out the fire. This is one of the things that there's this cross contamination with what appears to be the real UAP dollar bill, and then the man-made craft. It seems very similar to what's going on with the East Coast. Two things happening at once: the real phenomena and the man-made phenomena. But yeah, the other one I wanted to show you real quick here, Simeon, and this is getting to my old hometown, Eugene, Oregon, Springfield, Oregon. I have to share my screen here in order to do this. I've never shown this before here. In fact, I was kind of saving it for a special moment. So this is a special moment here. Select screen, yes. Mute, not now. Always. Okay, good. And let's go here. Can you see my screen now?
No, I've seen the
No.
same video from.
Okay. Well, it won't. Let's see if it lets me do it here. Mute. And try it one more time here. Okay. Entire screen. Allow. No, it won't let me do it here. Well, we'll save that one for a different time. But in short, it was a pretty remarkable, what appeared to be kind of a purple plasmoid coming up over one of the city streets that I grew up on. Pretty fascinating footage. Finding really good UFO footage nowadays isn't that hard, though. So I'll ask you the same question that I asked researcher Maureen Morgan, who was a MUFON director, MUFON investigator for years, still may be. I asked her, and I'm going to ask you the same question here. As far as the way disclosure is going to come about in this new administration in the next 4 days, do you think there's going to be any shift as far as the weight of what's coming up in 2025, or are they going to play more games with the people?
No, bizarrely enough, the people that Trump has appointed to cabinet positions and is in the process of appointing are seem to be very open to talking about this subject. In contrast to Democratic administrations, apart from Hillary Clinton, who had talked about this, prior to the election, and sometimes they feel it's not an election winner. Bill Clinton was interested in the subject, right? John Podesta and all of this. But we haven't heard much from since then. Since then, even the Obama did not talk very much about it. He made jokes about it after leaving office on some of those late night TV shows. Even during his administration, I think he said they won't let us talk about it and all. But some of the people that Trump seems to be appointing have talked about this and have this idea we should know what's going on. And Trump, in his press conference with the National Governors Association,
Saw
just
that. Yeah, that's only like a couple days old.
you have three of them. If you listen to the 10 minutes of it, they're saying, look, we saw these objects, we had to shut down the airport, and we want to know what this is, and the federal government isn't telling us. And Trump responds saying, give me one day after inauguration and I'm going to tell you what the drones are about, because they know what it's about and they don't want to talk about it. So that could be an indication of an administration that doesn't feel encumbered by previous, security kind of agreements, unspoken agreements
Mm.
between different organizations within the federal government. Don't talk about this. Let me give a quick example. James Lukatsky, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. He says right in this book, everyone who's listening, watching right now knows that this book's read it. He went to Department of Homeland Security with an additional funding proposal for more research at Skinwalker Ranch. And DHS, he says right in there, he names the woman who was in charge, says, that might make us look bad in front of the other agencies because we're a new intelligence agency. This is 2010 or something, and we don't want to look weird. So, that attitude has pervaded government for 70 years now. No one wants to rock the boat, but as we know, boats eventually get rocked and overturned in high tides that they don't see coming. And it doesn't seem like the Trump administration, the people around him, Marco Rubio has been outspoken
Hmm.
about this. They seem to really want to, because they want to get to the bottom of it, because any new administration that comes in, they want to establish some credibility with the American people that gives them kind of a higher ground vis-a-vis the previous administration. You know what I'm saying? They want to say, well, the previous
Right.
administration didn't do this, but we're going to do X. And they're thinking about their careers, and some of them are just probably fed up with the weird refusal to talk about this
Hmm.
subject. What people are seeing, state troopers and pilots and so forth over in New Jersey right now, and other areas. So they seem to be open to it, and let's see if Trump honors his word that he said, I'm going to talk about it. Give me one day to get inaugurated, and I'm going to come back to you and tell you what at least the drone situation is. So we might actually have some disclosure from a Trump administration, because they're kind of like, we want to break the mold type people, but they're coming from a kind of
Hmm.
conservative right wing perspective, but they still want to break the mold. And that mold, I mean, I'm happy for anyone to break the mold that has been
Right.
preventing us from, and think of
Or
all the
do they want to
witnesses.
steer? Do they want to steer the narrative? Do they want to appear as though they're breaking the mold and just give
No,
us another story?
no, I really get the feeling they're all such a bunch of mavericks, from RFK Jr. and some of the other ones. Some people question their competency. Yeah, you
Right.
could do that, but that could also be a subtle way of just not wanting to
Hmm.
look at some of the tough issues. I mean, just something I've been involved with for a long time:
Hmm.
artificially fluoridated water. We're getting a lot of progress on this daily from municipalities across the United States that say we're not doing it anymore every day. And part of it is just RFK Jr. saying, we can't pass a law federally, but we don't think it's a good idea. I mean, that's radical compared to the previous, you
Right.
know,
Well, you couldn't
department.
even have the conversation without the X-Files music playing in the background.
No,
And now
when
he's like writing tweets about chemtrails. And so it's like a whole I
yeah,
understand what you mean when you say Mavericks. Yeah.
yeah, and I mean, when we got involved with this in
Yeah.
Boulder, of just replacing the water fluoridation chemical with something that was, food grade, clean,
Right.
not some smokestack waste product from fertilizer plants, just something that was clean, that didn't have heavy metals in it. That was just one small step we think we could take. The opponents read my book, Opening Minds, and started making fun of some of the things I said in here in their comments about people involved in this citizens initiative in Boulder, Colorado. Actually, this is what they do. They read your books, and they're going to take a low shot. Oh, this guy believes in crop circles. They found something I said. Someone had a vision of a reptilian, someone involved with RV, and
Oh,
they,
right, right, right.
oh,
Yeah.
Dr. Hein, any reptile is going to show up
Yeah.
with anti-fluoride. So
Yeah, yeah,
that is
yeah.
low ball. So these people don't really seem to care. So at least we're getting some movement. And I think that
Mm,
goes over into all of these hidden event topics, not just UFOs, but Bigfoot,
mhm,
cryptids, other types of life forms that nobody I've seen in government has ever wanted to talk
mm.
about, with the exception of like that Army Corps of Engineers report in Washington State when they were looking at dam removal. Remember, from the 80s, and they had a couple pages on Bigfoot in the Northwest?
No.
Yeah, yeah, I
No.
remember seeing this a long time ago, having gone to
Mm.
WSU. There was the Army Corps of Engineer 1980s
Right.
report on, like they do this risk analysis and impact, like environmental impact statement. This is something, as in sociology, we familiar with these things, and people I worked with. So they did like an environmental impact assessment on Bigfoot, of removing dams and things like this. So if
That's
I
fascinating.
remember certainly correctly,
Mm.
so you had these occasional, the Hood River, Mount Hood National Forest. Remember, someone found the reporting forms. It's up in Jim Meyer's Sasquatch Outpost. Someone worked there, took a picture of the Bigfoot reporting forms, in the Mount Hood National Forest. So
Right.
you occasionally get some ribbon, but it's like a kind of like a iron curtain here of Soviet
Mm.
repression on all of these topics. So, anyway, Tobes, to answer your question, I think we could finally see some movement on this topic. I
Mm.
mean, if the president elect says he's going to talk about it in a couple days, I mean, even that alone, I've never heard any incoming president say anything remotely like that. Just one more example. A President Ford was interested in this topic
Mm.
as a congressperson. He was at those hearings in 1968. Remember, there was a congressional hearing in 68, a 1 day congressional hearing. Bob Wood was there, a couple other researchers, and that was, I think, Gerald Ford was there, but as in, when he replaced Nixon, he didn't ever mention it again. So I think we could. I think we should stop being cynical about this and say nothing's ever going to change. Everything changes eventually.
Right.
You should just name it. Everything changes. Eventually, the Earth won't even be here in a
Now,
long, long time. Don't get afraid. No, I'm saying the sun will get warmer.
sure, we live in a variable state, and this is
Everything. And so
yeah.
this could be, they might, let's just see. I mean, maybe reality will set in and they'll have other things to think about, but you've had some of them. Uh, Tim Burchett, a Republican. Where's he from? Kentucky? Tennessee, Kentucky? He's one of
Yeah.
those.
Well,
He's,
he's been the most outspoken besides
yeah.
Mace and Luna, I think, are right behind him, and then Rubio,
And
and then.
Rubio, and these people
But these
are.
are what's fascinating is it's kind of bipartisan. But the four names I mentioned here are all Republicans. But this does seem to be even Ocasio Cortez. It is on some of these same committees trying to find out what the real story is with these special
Yeah,
access programs here.
because
But
it matters about the funding, Tobes. This is what this all comes down to. The UFO reality of it is going to spill out of the investigation.
mhm.
Um, and it's more about, is there money, billions, hundreds of billions being spent on special access programs in, I'm just going to say it, crash retrieval programs that we're not seeing because it's so highly classified and Congress doesn't see, and
Mhm.
they might say we've had enough of this, we want to see the money trail,
Mhm.
where the guy, we fund you, DOD, we want to know where the money's going. And this could tangentially spill out into UFO disclosure, because the bottom line is, where are the bucks going? What type of debt are we creating? You get this. So it does actually impact real nuts and bolts stuff that Congress is supposed to be responsible for.
Now, you said crash retrieval. We should mention Saturday, I think Saturday morning, Ross Colhart is going to be talking to another whistleblower, a helo pilot that moved within 150 feet, I believe he said in the teaser they put out, an egg shaped craft that was
Yeah, yeah.
non human. So
Right, right.
that's, this all goes back to the world of the cryptid as far as disclosures going to maybe eventually happen here with the Bigfoot subject matter. I go back to what Franzoni said, is that this all belongs in the Department of Energy. And that's why we're not asking the right questions when it comes to, asking for disclosure here. So if this is under the DOE, is this a UFO issue as much as it is a Bigfoot issue, Simeon? Is it the same is it the same thing that we're talking about here? When we're talking about plasmoids, are we just talking about Bigfoot?
No, it's a big overlap of types of life forms. I mean, this is a really vast area of the universe that we haven't looked at officially, because of the stigma associated with studying these types of topics that blends over into paranormal phenomena. It
Right.
blends over because it's another type of electromagnetism that creates phantoms, electromagnetic phantoms. This is what the Soviets called it, electromagnetic phantoms, strange, persistent energy clusters that last for days without any input, that hide themselves in metals and other materials, can emerge at other times, cause the strangest effects on your technology, on your biology. And I think it's Tobes, I think it's an overlapping phenomenology here. It's a spectrum of phenomena that go from, I think, as Stan Gordon showed in his Silent Invasion book, from UFOs to Bigfoot to cryptids. This is how I see it. If anyone else sees it differently, fine. I'm not saying you have to see it this way, but it's a parallel reality in our space that operates according to an internal condensed type of electromagnetism, not the type we're used to of ordinary light and radio and fiber optics that spreads out. This goes inward and it creates its own boundary, so you don't see it all the time, but it's there. And that's why I think going from
Hmm.
this topic to plasmoids in the atmosphere to the F-18 pilots, Ryan Graves, all these pilots that said, look, we're concerned about the safety of our practice ranges if you have solid looking types of objects in our space that could cause damage to our aircraft, as we saw happen to one of those super scoopers fighting the horrendous fires in LA, right? And it was
Right.
dead.
Yeah. A little DGI
It's
Costco
just a
size. Yeah.
DGI, but but this has happened with these UAP. I've heard pilots talking about seeing floating metallic objects round decades ago that scraped the bottom of their
Hmm.
aircraft as they were landing. And what does the airline call it? Metal fatigue. Yeah, metal fatigue.
Okay.
It's ice crystals. I don't know. Make something up. They've been avoiding this. The longer you avoid talking about something that's real, it's like a rubber band effect. You're just pulling back that slingshot, right? And the longer you take to finally, when it gets released, the power is amplified because more and more people have had the experience. And so, yeah, from plasmoids in the atmosphere to creatures on the ground, we've had a moratorium on these topics. And I think these plasmoids in the atmosphere have been there the whole time. And it's your Flash of Beauty movie, part one, Bigfoot revealed, the psychologists in the last part of the film. I watched it again recently just to review what they said is that your brain, my brain, all of our brains have such strong defense mechanisms. You're going to delete experiences and observations that don't fit your sense of reality. And it could be as true of Bigfoot as it is of plasmoids and other objects. And the more people start to talk about it and see that it's okay,
Hmm.
the more other people begin to see it. It's just like when we're told the explorers came to indigenous peoples and they couldn't see the ship on the, yeah, couldn't see the ship out there.
Hmm.
And they had to get the medicine man, and he said, "Look, it looks like a mountain. Or look careful."
Right.
Our our neurology has to be retrained. The neurological structure of our
Hmm.
brains have to be recalibrated to see reality that was there the whole time. And I think, in terms of the Bigfoot topic, it means people will start remembering experiences they might have had that they chalked up to strange sounding birds at night, or weren't those weird sounding coyotes outside all night outside our tent,
Sure.
or
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
strange smell. And I wonder why it got so cold and dark. I had an RV person recently, just in our Bigfoot Zoom group, just last week, 2 weeks ago. She had watching a movie. A flood of memories came back from a camping trip to Mount Shasta, where all of a sudden she realized it wasn't birds, and it wasn't just dark, so dark for no reason, and it wasn't that feeling of something being next to your tent. It just kind of came back all of a sudden. So this is what could happen to people in terms of a lot of phenomena. I don't think we want it happening all at once. We don't want people, going crazy with this stuff, and in a negative way. But I think, in the way I look at it, these phenomena have been there the whole time. Indigenous peoples have talked about it, Native Americans, right? And those Western people like us, we think we're so smart. We've been to school for so many years. I think we know what reality is. And we've been pushing all that away and calling it paranormal and other derogatory names. But I think gradually you begin to see it's around, and the receptors in your brain, they've been seeing it but pushing it away, because my RV research, from reading about the physiology of this, is our brains delete Tobes. You wouldn't believe it. It's not 99% of the stimuli that come into our senses. It's 99.999 with a lot going on. Yeah, we're talking almost all of it is deleted. So it wouldn't be surprising if some of the stranger stuff gets deleted, but once people start talking about it, even a president, there's some part of you that feels it's okay. I'm not going to be made fun of. I'm not going to be thrown out of the group for talking about this. And I think it's not just mass contagion. It's actually seeing reality that was there the whole time that you didn't want to talk about for a variety of reasons. And there's that's so yeah. There's my long-winded answer to your question whether the new administration could do anything about this. I think just the fact that they're talking about it openly and not laughing at it is a big step forward.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about the fact that we kind of lie to ourselves and we push these hidden events out of our, not only our subconscious, but just out of our everyday conversations, I think we're at least moving to a healthy place where we can talk about these stranger things not only without the X Files music, but we can kind of talk about them and share them openly instead of the back rooms, because this is why, like when I started doing podcasts at live events, they had to kind of be at a bar. They had to be where there's a little bit of social lubrication to talk about these stranger things, and it would be more of like a campfire excuse, a campfire story, right? Instead of it just being, but it didn't last very long because people really were feeling this, right? Like, so it turned into like an Al-Anon kind of meeting for these people to confess what really happened. And you could tell immediately the people that really had um, long-term Sasquatch encounters, which is the more unbelievable casework that I looked into, is people that have perpetual encounters. That these people, they had a different story to tell about everything in life. It wasn't just it wasn't just Bigfoots. It was also UFOs. And so the idea that these people were contactees of Bigfoot seems so similar to what John Mack was talking about with the abduction experiences and the contactees. Um, and so last night I asked Maureen Morgan again. She was a guest that I had at the local thing that I do down the street in Port Townsend once a month called Olympic Strange Days Live, a local to Port Townsend. And I asked her just in general about her casework as far as working with abductees. And so what I did is I left her to her own devices to talk to an abductee named Alex. And Alex and his father, who was on Zoom, sat there on the computer, one in person, one on the monitor, with Maureen, and she interviewed them as though she was a caseworker arriving on the scene. And I want to go just through some of these questions here that she asked Alex. Um, and there's 44 questions. We won't have time to get into all of them, but this is a way to kind of go through as a caseworker to write down markers for people that have actual encounters here. Now, does the BFRO have a checklist like this for Sasquatch? I don't know, but this might be interesting to put in your little back of Bigfoot gear here to ask people when you get on scene about things that have happened, especially the long-term Sasquatch contactees. Questions like any effects or electrical appliances, street lights, or drain batteries, any medically confirmed missing pregnancies, observing non humans and then becoming paralyzed, consciousness recall, or observing non human entities in strange environments, reoccurrent unexplained nosebleeds. Now, a lot of these questions here, she's asking to the witness. I'm off stage having a cold Rainier watching the show go down here. And Alex has never been asked these questions before. And he's saying yes to a lot of these questions here. Fear of sleeping alone, visions, heightened spirituality, feeling of sense of oneness with something greater than yourself, concern for the Earth's environment, disproportionate concern for the environment, disproportionate concern for nuclear weapons, and it just goes on and on and on. And I think if you get a certain amount of these here, you're put inside more the credible stack of things that have happened here. So is there a list that Simeon, to do you have a list like this when you talk to people? Do you go down and categorize who to spend more time with?
Not quite like that. I mean, I talk to a variety of people. I don't actually use that type of formal social science.
I didn't think you did, but just
Yeah, it is
you
because
probably keep crib notes for
yeah,
research.
I do.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I do. I keep notes, and I'm in touch with a couple witnesses right now that I hope to interview and take notes from.
Yeah.
One is a dogman case, and another Bigfoot witness. And for all of you listening right now, watching, I mean, I've learned so much just from interacting with you. Those of you that were at Olympic Strange Days. I mean, these stories are what keep me going in this area since 1996 when I first learned remote viewing.
Hmm.
The best part about it wasn't actually the remote. I mean, the remote viewing is cool, but it was just meeting so many interesting people with stories like this from all walks of the federal government and private life. And then it gradually transitioned into Bigfoot stories over a couple decades. And it's just the type of thing that I'd never forget. I'm wondering, after decades, hear these stories and I look at the commonalities. And when I hear something over and over again, like someone just asked here in the comment section, Tobes, are plasmoids connected with Bigfoot? Yes,
Okay.
they are, because this is what I've talked to people that said they have seen the Sasquatch emerge from a ball of light. And in Flash of Beauty, Paranormal Bigfoot, as those of you watching right now know,
Right.
there is two witnesses from Coquille, Oregon, who see a Bigfoot type creature when something like that, scrunched down into a glowing square of light like the sun, as Cody described it. No, it was the other fellow who described it that way.
Right.
Harold,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
a burning. I mean, so yeah, that's the answer to the question. But I've heard this from witnesses in
Yeah.
Colorado and many other places. There's that Miwok Native American saying that where a Sasquatch walks, a lantern follows. You
Oh,
had
wow. I've never heard that
yes,
before.
yeah, yeah, and so it does seem now in my
Mm,
mind this is because we're talking about related coherent matter phenomena
mm.
that coherent matter forms orbs and life forms that can take a life forms coherent matter just being types of matter that can switch between a matter form and a wave-like form, a literal quantum wave where the
Mhm.
particles just become all the same and become wave-like. And wave-like materials could just act like a ball of light. So yeah,
Absolutely.
so it's yeah. So anyway, talking to people and getting these stories is just priceless toast. But I don't literally use one of those lists to see. But that's interesting. By the way, this is what sociologists would do if they were more formally attempting to publish this type of research. In a respectable journal, they would go through these lists of sort
Mhm.
of worldview type questions to see if
Right.
it's right.
Yeah. If you ever get a chance, not only go see Simeon at a conference, but also go check out Maureen Morgan's work too. I think she'll be speaking at the Paranormal Summit in Ocean Shores coming up this year. Check your local listings at Parent. I think it's called Paranormal Summit Ocean Shores at the casino there. I did pose a question here. If anybody has any questions for Simeon, now's your chance here. In the few minutes that we have left with him here, just write them down in the chat, and then I will bring them up here on the screen here for everyone to check out. Simeon, what do you have coming up here? I know that you're all over the place right now. You have some conferences that you want to promote.
Let's see. Well, we're going to see each other in July, won't we?
Yeah.
Over in
Yes. We're all going to be in July at the Sasquatch Summit there in
yeah,
Oakland,
Oregon.
Oregon. Sasquatch Summerfest. Yeah. Anything before then coming up or?
No, I've got the Snippy 24 conference again in Alamosa in August, but that's still just for the family, as far as I know. It's
Okay.
not it's not open to the public yet because they're still developing it. And those are two that come to mind. We started our Bigfoot RV project. So we're going to be, and at the moment it's just within our RV group, and we'll take other people at another time. People have to kind of have a certain level of RV training to get some description. But we're going to be taking famous cases of Sasquatch encounters, the viewers won't know what the case is.
Oh,
And
that's right.
yeah, it'll be randomized. And just to see, it's just a kind of a test. Can we get more information about where the Sasquatch are coming from, what some of their intentions are? What's actually going on in some of these encounters? How do they see us? Do we seem as strange to them as they can seem to us sometimes, or equally as comforting and interesting to be around? I mean, so that's the sort of thing we're going to be exploring in some of these viewing sessions with these
Hmm.
viewers that I've been working with in our viewing group, our monthly viewing group for over a year now. So I know these viewers really well.
Is
And
this going to be made public, the
yeah, we'll
data?
make the results public. This is
Okay.
just
You got to
to
do it
get,
like a conference with them all talking about it, or just write it up?
we'll see. We'll see how where it goes. We'll see where it goes.
Okay. One of the questions here from Renee Drew: does Simeon think the fourth dimension could be the rabbit hole? I assume of where Sasquatch come in and out of. If that's what you mean, Renee, let me know. Is the fourth dimension the kind of verbiage that you would describe for what they're doing? Is in scientific terms, do people use the fourth dimension to describe what's happening here interdimensionally?
Well, first of all, hello, Renee. Nice to see you again. See you. Um, I'm a remote viewer, So, but I'm just kidding, guys. But yeah, Renee and I met up at Medellin Falls at when
Oh,
there
great.
was a screening of Paranormal Bigfoot. Yep. It could be fourth dimension. It could be a type of fractal dimension between dimensions, which is what fractals are. So there's a number of possibilities where they're coming from. When
Okay, next. Oh,
we
go
can't
ahead. Finish
see
your
them,
thought.
they're here, but it could be a limitation of our perception. I mean, the real question, Tobes, is we were talking about this before the show. When they seem to us like the predator shimmering effect, the Barb Shoop video and everything. Is that our perception doing that, or have they physically changed, or are we changing?
I
I
see what
mean,
you're saying.
the assumption has been they're coming into our
Mm,
reality. Maybe they're there the whole time, and we're phasing into their reality. You know.
that makes sense. From Daniel Gesmer, have there been any sightings of Bigfoot emerging from trees? We talked about them going into it, but what about emerging? Have you heard those too?
Well, hey, Dan. Shout out to Dan. How's it going? Um, no, that's. I think there probably have been some. I can't think of them specifically, but yes, I think there. I think if my memory serves correct, they
Mm,
do seem to emerge from trees also. Occasionally, I think that seems to be something I can recall people of talking about. Again, trees are like fractal shapes, so it leads you to believe that fractal shapes can be associated with fractal life forms, right? Just the way that fractal geometry, Tobes, is related to chaos theory, right?
right.
Chaos theory being the butterfly effect. Fractal shapes seem to create these chaotic patterns and strange attractors, so forth. And dynamics, fractal, chaotic dynamics over time,
Hmm.
where small changes can have a big effect. Um, Even some of these fires tragically can illustrate that. We had one out in Superior, south of Boulder, where it just reminded me of this recently in the past couple of weeks, the LA fires, where it just swept across. I was in a building at the time, you could just see it sweep across the plain so quickly. Could have just
Hmm.
started one tiny little thing, all of a sudden, people only had 10 minutes, 5 minutes to leave their homes in Superior, and it was just terrible.
Hmm.
So that is kind of chaos theory. But the point I want to make is the way that fractals relate to chaos theory could relate to plasma energy too. In other words, another class of events that has life forms built around it, not just interesting models that we call chaos theory, but actual life forms built around this. And this could be what people are seeing, which would be why, Dan, that you get this association between Bigfoot and trees, and think the tree knocking sound and them emerging from trees, going back into trees, is because fractals, birds of a feather flock together, and fractal
Hmm.
type objects and fractal life forms.
Hmm.
Think of a lot of these cryptids and Bigfoot, dogmen. They have a lot of hair, right? We're always told how the hair is like long hair and so forth. That could be part of how they're doing what they do, because hair is kind of like an antenna structure, and it has this fineness to it, right? On the surface of our
Like
skin,
a fiber, are you getting to the fiber optic theory?
the fiber optic theory and generating static charges. Once you have
Okay.
static, you get charge clusters, exotic vacuum objects,
Hmm.
plasmids. It could
Well, and it
come.
gets to that Pearl Parada theory that they're using rubidium, which is used in cloaking technology. She got quite a bit of pushback from the DoD when she started doing microscopic analysis on that at Los Alamos. She's a local author here, Bigfoot gal up north in Washington State, and that was kind of her theory, is that they were using something like rubidium to either rub on their hair in order to give this fiber optic ammunition for them to disappear. That would also kind of explain how some Sasquatch are seeing cloaking midpoint. I've talked to people that have only seen the kneecaps of a hairy hominid walking across,
So,
the Seabeck Highway out here in the Olympic Peninsula, or just the shoulders, right? Or just the feet, just certain aspects of them. So maybe not a vibrational state happening.
right,
Um,
that's Stan Gordon mentions that in, I think, his book Creepy Cryptids, Volume 4.
okay.
People seen a Sasquatch, but invisible in some sections.
Yeah. Like an unfinished drawing. Yeah.
Yeah, and other people, you listen to Sasquatch Chronicles, people describing only seeing legs, but nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, go figure. So this is, yeah, rubidium atoms, if I'm not mistaken, were used in the Bose-Einstein condensate, I believe, too, and superconductivity, right? So
Yeah. I mean, Pearl, if
these
you're
all have
listening here, I know,
matter-related phenomena. So it's just
Pearl, you need to reach out to Simeon via email at some point, or at least sneak into a conference where Simeon is. I think you two would be great together around a coffee table. I'd sure like to listen to that. I have a selfish question here, and there's one more question I'm going to take here from the chat here. But Simeon, the hitchhiker effect is a part of this phenomena as well. Has it affected you? And if so, give us an anecdotal or more story about the phenomena that is following you, because you go to these charged areas here. And so, are you experiencing poltergeist activity, gifting, sightings?
no.
No.
I've never experienced any of that. Um, it's just sort of my particular pathway. I haven't encountered any cryptids yet. I can't remember encountering any Sasquatch.
Hmm.
Um,
No strange things happening around you after you leave an area that would be tantamount to the hitchhiker?
well, I have been doing TM meditation since I was 14. So that puts it at like
Mm.
a half a century of meditation. Maharishi inspired TM.
uh,
What you learn from that,
mm,
which transitioned into Qigong, Tai Chi,
right.
and those sort of light martial arts, is creating a positive energy field everywhere you go and maintaining that no matter what the circumstances are. And so it could have something to do with kind of the Qigong Tai Chi ideas, neutralizing negative energy, is kind of having these shock absorbers in your Qi field that just sort of, if those things show up, they kind of, in like the push hands, they just kind of get in. I mean, I'm not trying to push them away or anything. I'm open to all these types of phenomena. I don't experience the hitchhiker effect in my life. I think I
Mm,
have a lot of other
mm,
weird things going on, and I write music too, which is its own inverse hitchhiker effect. People
mm.
listen to the songs and they want to hear them again. So it's like, maybe I'm creating a hitchhiker effect. It's part of my marketing
Yeah.
strategy Tobes. I'm the hitchhiker, right? You don't let anything attach it. I'm kind of kidding with you here, but
Right.
I don't totally understand. No, but I know people
Mm.
experience this. We heard about it in Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. It sounded pretty terrifying.
Right.
And the kids start seeing these things, and they haven't even
Mm.
told them what they did.
No.
I,
In fact, I
I,
just talked to one of the cameramen from Skinwalker Ranch that lives up here in Washington, and they have poltergeist activity in their condo, and they just kind of like have to deal with it now. It's part of maybe why Bigelow left the ranch eventually. I would assume he brought the work home with him, which is not copacetic with your spouse at all times when you have bottles of wine flying off the shelf or puddles of water collecting, in the middle of the kitchen floor for no reason. These are all tantamount to, pretty big signs that you have the hitchhiker effect happening or some kind of attachment.
I think the hitchhiker effect, yeah, that's the word, attachment. It takes two to tango, and it's
Mhm.
attaching to some energy field within you too. So this is
Correct.
not
Mm.
just, I think that hitchhiker effect idea was kind of a sexy idea that the DoD might want to fund because
Right.
you could relate it to medical contagion.
Right.
Right. And so, government agencies, DoD, they like threat scenarios, and it's better for your funding of a threat scenario. So they're more likely to talk in that frame of, in that way. But my thinking is it's not as much anything attaching itself to you as it is your frequency is changed by your exposure to the various types of energy fields at
Hmm.
hotspots like Skinwalker Ranch. And you're
Hmm.
going to begin perceiving these types of entities back home in Maryland that were
Right.
there the whole time. You didn't really resonate with them before. That's my counter explanation to the hitchhiker effect. But I've heard this many times. You heard about these Bigfoot encounters, and people drive home like an hour on the highway or something back to town, and they're out there in the yard again, the same ones.
Oh yeah. Right.
I mean, so you think, are they running at highway speeds all the way behind your car, like an Igor Burtsev type story from Russia, where he has some video of them like following, chasing after a car, pounding, so that sort of thing? Are they teleporting, or is it some other related creature? Now you're at that frequency. It's a good discussion. I don't know all
I
the
want
answers.
I want to bring up real quick here. Periodically, you will see a hitchhiker over my left shoulder. It's a little white spot that blinks like a little piece of glitter. I think that might be a burnout pixel. It seems to only happen here when I do restream from my house. I can't imagine that it's part of the hitchhiker effect. For the most part, on our end, that has pretty much died down. Although we did have some white chalky handprints that showed up when we bought this place here, then it just seemed to fade away, Simeon, at that point. It seems to have a half life um, to the whole phenomenon. It kind of fades away, especially if you don't interact with it. Somebody did have a question for you in general, Simeon. How do they contact you if they want to get in touch with you, not only about your work, but if they have some questions about
Yeah,
what's going on?
you can go to my easy to remember website, simeonhine.com/contact. I have a contact form actually on all my websites, simeonhine.com or newcrystalmind.com, which is my blog, has a contact page. And just fill it out, and I'll get an email, and then we can go from there. Sure.
All right. I didn't get a chance to show your books here, but I do want to mention the fact that Simeon is the author of Opening Minds, Black Swan Ghost Part 1 and 2, Dark Matter Monsters, and of course, he's got the bookmarks to prove it.
It's
And you
the
don't have
card.
to. Yeah.
And
Hey, thank.
planetary intelligence, the perennial favorite.
Yeah.
It's
Now we have some fun for you coming up in July in Oak Ridge, Simeon. We have two different venues that we're going to be utilizing you and all the other speakers at as well, because there's a new museum in town called the Area 58 Museum there on Highway 58 in Oak Ridge, Oregon.
Area
Priscilla
58.
has taken fresh reports on her fresh YouTube channel under Area 58. You can go watch those now. They're researching not only Bigfoot, but they're looking into all the other tangential issues here, the overlapping conundrum of the supernatural and Sasquatch. So go check that out. Other than that, we will see you folks at the Sasquatch Squatch Fest in Longview, Washington. That is the 24th and 25th of next week. Jill and I, from our usual Thursday night show, will be in tow. I don't know if the director will be there, Brett Eichenberger or Mike Simeon. I don't know if are you gonna try to make it down to Longview for this one?
I just found out about. I didn't know about it. I just saw it in the chat here.
Oh, really? Okay.
By the
Yeah.
way,
Well, if go ahead.
Jackie's question. Yes, that is a type of. She asked if seeing a flash of light and glowing eyes is a type of contact. Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, it Squatch Fest. So we'll be there for that. That's the 24th and 25th, and then of course the Grand Glacier Hotel in Eastern Oregon, Eastern Washington. I forget which one. I know it's on the east side somewhere,
On
and
the
I
east
think
side,
it's Eastern Washington coming up
Rand,
here
what's
in
it called?
March. I think it's the Grand Glacier Hotel. Jill,
When is
if
when
you're
is that?
listening, it's a beautiful haunted hotel out there underneath the Blue Mountains. So it definitely that would be Washington proper, I believe. Yeah, I believe in Burns. I hope I'm getting this right here.
Oregon, Burns,
We've
Oregon. Yeah. Yep.
uh-huh. Okay, so those are our big events coming up. We'll talk more about them in the future. But if you're in Longview next week, we'll be there, and I'll have all these wood watchers ready to go. If you guys are interested at our booth, and we'll be ready to take your reports as well. So come with your stories and hang out with us in Longview next weekend. I believe the 25th is going to be a packed house. It's usually sold out, so you may want to think about getting your tickets now. Thank you, Simeon, for tonight. And
Thanks.
hey, a special shout out to director David Lynch. We lost a great inspiration for me into the world of the taboo, the world of wooded mysteries. I'm doing a little representing here with a shirt that says the owls are not what they seem. It was really Twin Peaks, the world of Twin Peaks, that brought this idea of there being an avatar in these woodland creatures to me. And, the owls don't seem to be what they seem. There's other things going on out there. And David Lynch was kind of the brainchild behind that whole concept. So he will be missed, and hopefully someone come behind him and take that banner there. So anyway, that's it for tonight, folks. We'll see you next week. Thank you again, Simeon,
Thanks,
and
guys.
I will see you all in the trees. Good night, everybody.